28851, turn right heading 180. Order 14 Papa, turn right 245, report localizer established 27.
Hey everyone, welcome to DJ's Aviation. This is my very first attempt at doing something like this, and it's actually been something I've been wanting to do for quite a long time now. I've just been trying to find the right time, so it is going to be a completely different style to my usual YouTube videos. Today's topic is going to be on the situation of Etihad Airways. I asked a lot of people in my Discord server if they had any questions that they wanted me to not only answer but also give my opinions on. That's where the questions are going to be coming from today. I'll give a special mention to the questions associated with a particular person. I've also included some questions that I want to explore as well. With future topics, I'm not too sure if the structure will be exactly the same. It's honestly going to depend how this goes down with everyone. So this sort of thing is going to be completely unscripted. Usually all my videos are scripted because I find it quite difficult to improvise and just come up with random things in a video. So again, this is completely out of my comfort zone. If you want to be a part of any future episodes of this sort of thing, I'll be listing topics on my Twitter page. This is where you can ask me questions, or alternatively, you can join the Discord server. There'll be a link to my email in the description. Feel free to then send me an email letting me know you'd like to join the Discord server, and then I'll happily send out the link to you. And one more thing before I properly get into this video, I only have limited Etihad Airways footage. As you're probably aware, Etihad Airways don't operate, let's say, 15 daily flights into my airport. So in this video, there'll be a selection of pretty much every single Etihad Airways clip I've ever filmed. But then after that, you're just going to start seeing random airlines throughout, just so you're not looking at one still image or one blank screen, if that makes sense. That's just an explanation for people that will be in the comments asking why this has occurred. But without further ado, let's move on. The first question I have is from Mint. Mint is a very, very awesome contributor to the Discord server and also the YouTube channel, always helping out in the DJ show and everything like that. She asks, do you believe Etihad will end up like Alitalia or Airberlin? As you're probably aware, Alitalia are in severe financial troubles right now, and of course Airberlin have completely collapsed. Now these two airlines Etihad had quite a big investment in. That's also contributed to their huge losses. I know a lot of people are thinking that they're going to end up like Airberlin or Alitalia, etc. Personally for me, I actually feel the complete opposite. This is kind of the beauty of these sorts of things, is I just get to openly share what I want, and I don't usually get to do that in all my videos just because people can see it as controversial, or sometimes it can offend them. So what I see happening with the Etihad Airways situation is I would expect probably more losses for maybe 3 years, 2 years. I wouldn't give an exact time frame, but that's, I guess, my guess. As we know, in a recent video I made, Etihad did report severe losses for the year of 2017. However, it was actually a slight improvement. I believe it was around 1.5 billion US, of course. In 2016, it was around 1.9 billion. So many could see that as an improvement, but it's still, at the end of the day, putting everything aside, is a loss and is extremely detrimental to them as an airline. It's worth noting, in regards to your question, Mint, that Etihad, while applying some changes in 2017, were actually heavily impacted by Airberlin and Alitalia, and also the rising fuel costs and operation costs. So there were a lot of things that really just hit the airline in 2017. You'll probably notice that this year a lot more changes were made. I'm going to go into all the changes that have been made this year a bit later on in this podcast and or video, depending on how you're consuming it. So to answer your question completely though, I don't believe they'll end up like Airberlin or Alitalia, as I believe they are making the right moves to right their wrongs, as I do like to say. But by no means is it going to be a quick fix, something that will happen overnight. I don't see that at all. It's going to be something like a 3-year project where Etihad continue to assess everything they've done, try and fix their wrongs, and move on from that. The next question is one I put forward to myself. Will Etihad Airways turn their fortunes around? I briefly touched on this in the previous question, but I do want to go more in depth with what I believe will happen in the next 3 years. Now, you're probably aware lots of routes have been cut. For instance, the Abu Dhabi to Perth was cut. That's an established route as well, as it's been going for many years now. They did downsize the aircraft just recently, and it will be cancelled on October the 1st of 2018. This is quite a noteworthy route as it is into Australia, and many were saying that it was performing well. Perth wasn't the only route. There were many others around the globe which were unfortunately cancelled from the Etihad Airways network. And I know in my videos alone, this received a lot of uproar, and I'm sure it was also expressed throughout social media. And this is purely because when someone sees that an airline is cancelling a route, that can only mean one thing, and that's pretty much that the airline is facing extremely tough times. And while in the Etihad Airways case, yes, they are experiencing tough times, the decision to cut the routes wasn't necessarily because it wasn't performing, let's say. Some of those routes probably were doing not too badly, but it's pretty much all tied into this idea that if the airline can cut down on some of its routes, hopefully that will lower the cost. This is tied in with the airline removing some of its aircraft. If you're unaware, some of the 777-200 LRs left the fleet just recently, I believe in maybe the past couple of months. Etihad Cargo also lost their A330s. This was kind of in a way to act as like a streamline of their fleet. For example, the Etihad Cargo fleet now only consists of the 777F, so the one aircraft, which essentially is beneficial. And with the 777-200s leaving, it means that the airline just operates the 777-300 series, which again is beneficial to them in the whole streamlining process. When you're taking a look at the future orders of Etihad Airways, there is quite a variation of aircraft, as I've previously discussed. For example, there's still many 787s to come, and that's not just the Dash 9s, they've also got to receive their Dash 10s, then they've got the Airbus A350, the 777X, and the A321neos. So the next thing is Etihad Airways making the right changes. So as I briefly said, it was the removal of aircraft, cutting costs wherever they can, and I do believe these are the right changes. Of course, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and people may see the removal of aircraft and the removal of flights as a bad choice long term, but Etihad Airways will always have that option of reinstating the flights later down the track if they see it a good idea. It's mainly just for now, so I would say the next 3 years when these routes probably won't be operating, as it's all that whole process of trying to become profitable again. There was a $400 million decrease in terms of losses, so while the airline still had a $1.5 billion loss, which I have to keep saying is really bad, it wasn't as bad as 2016, which is the one positive that they can take from this. And it's worth noting 2017 was a bad year in terms of Airberlin and Alitalia. 2018, while we haven't heard a whole lot in terms of profits and everything like that, it is shaping up to be a better year for Etihad as they're cutting the costs on multiple different things. So I do believe the removal of aircraft is probably a good choice. They're going for their older ones, which again is probably the best choice. You wouldn't want to start removing your 787s or your new A350s that eventually come in and so on. So the oldest ones are probably the best because, as we know, they do still operate the 777, so that's going to be a big thing when it comes to deciding which one's which. Biposto or Biposto in my Discord server asked this question. He said, what are your thoughts on future orders with Etihad Airways? As I mentioned, Etihad Airways have quite the extensive order list. I'm going to pull that up now in front of me just so I can kind of run down all the up-and-coming orders and what I believe will eventuate. Now, it's pretty much common knowledge that when an aircraft is ordered from an airline, it will likely be delivered. However, there are actually other things that airlines can do. For example, they can defer and sometimes even cancel it if they believe it's not the right choice. So I'm going to run down what the airline has on order, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on each after. So they have 30 Boeing 787-10s on order, 17 Boeing 777-9s, and 8 Boeing 777-8s. Now, this is part of the 777X series. They have a further 22 Boeing 787-9s on order, 22 Airbus A350-1000s, 40 A350-900s, and 26 A321neos. Now, I'm going to begin with the Boeing side of things, and that's the Boeing 787-10. Now, if you ask me what's going to happen, I don't know if we're going to see the Boeing 787-10 anytime soon. It is scheduled here that deliveries will begin sometime this year. Whether they take all 30 immediately, I believe, is unlikely. maybe 15 will come, or 10, or even 5. But it's all part of that thing of streamlining and not getting extra aircraft that aren't necessary. Of course, we don't know the full plans for Etihad, so I don't know if they're going to cancel more routes in the future. But if they are going to, then they're not going to need all 30 787-10s immediately. Through deferring something like 25 of the 787-10s, it could mean a decade down the track, they can pick up the rest of those aircraft when they're profitable again, relaunch the routes, and so on. And that's kind of my views on the 777Xs as well. I made a video on this, but I want to go more in depth with it because, of course, this is a show basically only for Etihad Airways. Now, the order is entitled 25. As I said, it's split up between the Dash 8 and the Dash 9. My original thoughts were the airline's definitely going to need to defer some of the aircraft, in my opinion. There's no way that they need 25. So what I would say is best is maybe get some of the Dash 9s in. As we know, the Dash 8 will be launching later than the Dash 9, so I wouldn't necessarily make a decision on that variant just yet, because for all we know, in 2022, when that aircraft variant is supposedly going to launch, Etihad Airways might be profitable again. So I would definitely take some of the Dash 9s. I wouldn't take all 17, maybe around 5, 6, 7, see how things go. If it doesn't go well, I guess they could get rid of it or store it somewhere for the time being, but certainly get a few in just to see how it operates with them as an airline. Moving on to the Airbus side of things, they've got the A350s on order, so that's the Dash 1000 and the Dash 900. Now, the decision on these two aircraft need to be made soon, and I'm just going to go into my thoughts. I don't believe they need the A350s at the moment. While the A350 is certainly a very good aircraft and would probably work well within their operations, right now in 2018, in June, I don't think it's needed. This might change in May of next year when we find out Etihad Airways are only 100 million in debt, but I just feel like the 787, as I said, maybe getting in some of the Dash 10s would be a far better option than getting the A350 series. So what I would do there is defer some of the orders, because you never know, down the track they may need it. And as I've said so many times now, the Etihad Airways fleet is really exciting, and even in the future, it's going to be really revolutionary and an exciting fleet to fly on. So I wouldn't cancel all of them. If they're going to cancel any, I would probably say it would be the A350-900, but again, it's going to heavily depend on what they do with the 787-10s. Now, as for the A321neos, I'm unsure on that. There's no real news on what's going to happen with those aircraft, so I can really only give my opinion, and that is, I believe they should definitely take some on. They operate the A320, A321, the standard editions at the moment. They have 22 A320s and 10 A321s, again with the 26 A321neos on order. So I would say take maybe 5 or 10, again similar to all the other aircraft, but more specifically the 777X, see how things go. So that's just going to be an answer to your question. The next question is going to be coming from Maz. Maz is another great supporter of the channel and actually has the record for the most donated through Super Chat, so I really do appreciate your question and of course all your support. Maz says, do I think this will mean a fleet downsize on top of the delaying of deliveries? Again, this is going to tie in very nicely with the previous topic I was discussing with fleets and everything. So what I can see happening is a fleet downsize. I really don't believe that the airline should be growing in terms of aircraft. That's just not the right way to go about it. As we know, routes have been cancelled. With less routes, they don't need as many aircraft. With not as many aircraft and not as many routes, it hopefully means that they won't be spending as much, which again is a positive, because for these next 3 to 5 years, the airline really needs to be focusing on how much they're spending, if their routes are profitable and everything like that. So while I don't have like an in-depth answer to your question, hopefully what I talked about in the previous point kind of answers it for you. But yeah, I believe downsizing is certainly the option for the airline. The next question is mine, and it's what are my thoughts on the removal of aircraft within Etihad Airways. So the last few points have been pretty much surrounding the fleet. My thoughts again are completely positive. I believe this is a fantastic move from Etihad Airways, as it's going to be very good for their future. And I know I've seen a lot of my comments and people are saying that, why do they remove the 777-200? Do they want to go out of business? Do they want to lose more people? Even in the Etihad cargo fleet, they lost, for instance, the A330F. People again thought that was a really bad move. All in all though, this is a positive move for the airline, and taking them forward, I believe it will definitely be the right one, and they certainly won't be looking back on it. Fingers crossed that Etihad can continue to stay up as an airline and don't encounter even worse losses for 2018. I don't believe this to be likely, but if the losses go back to 1.9 billion, let's say, or hopefully not worse, like let's say over 2 billion, then I believe they'll be in severe trouble, and I mean absolutely severe trouble. So that's when I would likely see more aircraft be removed. But honestly, it is the right choice. I believe they've picked the right aircraft as well. As I touched on earlier in the episode, the Dash 200 really is just an older aircraft within most fleets. As we know, Air New Zealand have the 777-200 and are now looking to replace that with a newer aircraft. So it is on the way out, and it was probably going to be retired at some point anyway, but the acceleration came after the airline continued to report losses. If it was a bit all over the place, I will try my best to work on that. It's pretty nerve-wracking doing something like this for the first time. Although I know I have the DJ show, this was completely unscripted. All I had in front of me was, for instance, the questions and the Etihad Airways fleet. So completely out of my comfort zone, but something that I can continue to improve on. And if you want to see more of these sort of in-depth analysis, but also really just hearing my opinion on everything, please don't hesitate to let me know. The next topic is probably going to be on London airports, as it's something I'm really interested in and have quite a strong opinion and view on the London Heathrow expansion, comparing it to Gatwick and everything like that. I really did enjoy this. I felt it was a lot more laid back. So feel free to subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I look forward to you all joining me in the second episode of this sort of video.
Race all of these broken dreams in flight, and we'll fly.